All right, so we're doing secants and tangents again. This is day 2. We're going back to this theorem. This theorem is going to come up in your Canvas question, so I will advise you to kind of remember that. We're only talking about this formula. Notice how there's a minus and not a plus, right? And that's for problems that look like this. There is an angle that's formed by an external point or a point that's on the outside, right? There's your angle, right? And then you can have two secants, two tangents, or one tangent and one secant. And that's what we have, an external angle that's formed by one tangent and one secant, right? So this is angle theta, and it's formed by one tangent line and one secant. Point H is the external point. All right, so we have to use this formula to solve for the angle, right? So it's angle equals half big arc minus small arc, right? So our angle that we're talking about is theta. Half stays the same. Our big arc is 151. Our small arc was 83, and we just solve. So right now we're doing PEMDAS. This is an example of an easier problem. 151 minus 83 gives you 108. Then you do half times 108, or it's the same thing as 108 divided by 2, and you end up with theta equals 34. All right, and that's just kind of it. So we're just going to go over now when you can and cannot use the formula, and you're going to see some of that in your Canvas. So let's look at example problem number 1. Can we use this formula that we've been using to solve for the following? If no, why? If yes, then solve for x. So here's where your x is, right? And you have to think, when can we use this formula? We just talked about it on the first page. You have to have an external line, point that is formed by two secants, two tangents, or a secant and a tangent. Right now, is this formed by an external point or a point that's on the outside of the circle? No, right? So we cannot use this formula. The angle for x is an inscribed angle, right? This is the angle where x is. That's an inscribed angle. To use the formula, angle equals half big arc minus small arc, the angle needs to be formed by an external point, and there is no point on the outside of the circle, so you should know right away, can't use the formula. All right, let's look at example problem number 2. Same exact question. Can we use this formula to solve for x in the following? If no, why? If yes, solve. All right, we do have an external point here, right? The external point is point F. Now I just need to ask myself, is this point that's on the outside formed by a secant and a tangent, two secants, or two tangents? And it is, right? This is your tangent line right here. This is your tangent, and this one is your secant. So now we're just using the formula. This angle, x, is equal to half times big arc minus small arc. And let's just quickly talk. If I wanted to figure out this, 110 plus 60 plus 190, what does that give you? Hopefully your answer is 300, right? You can always figure out the other arcs if you have enough information. All right, so we can use the formula. We're solving for x. We're doing angles equal to half times big arc minus small arc. So x is equal to half times 110 minus 60. That's your bigger arc, that's your smaller arc. And we don't use the 190. This has nothing to do with this angle. It's not an intercepted arc. So we have x equals half times 50, and x equals 25 should be your final answer. All right, we don't have that much more to go, or maybe we do. All right, I would like you to pause this and try it on your own if you can, but if you can't, that's no big deal. So the directions are solve for the missing arcs in the following. So we've been solving for an angle. This time your angle is given to you, right? So you're solving for the missing arc. I have my angle, I have my small arc, and I'm missing my big arc. I don't care about what these two things are. I only want to figure out where x is. So I have to pull out my equation, which is angles equal to half times big arc minus small arc. Make sure big arc minus small arc is in parentheses just as it's been. So we plug things in. The angle that we're talking about is 15. Half stays the same. Your big arc is x. Your small arc is 20. And now we just have to solve. So we have 15 equals half times x minus 20. We need to start getting this x by itself, but it's in parentheses. So you have to get rid of the thing that is on the outside of this parenthesis, and that's half. You could divide both sides by half, or you can multiply by the reciprocal. So when you multiply by the reciprocal, this half and this 2 cancel out. All right, so 2 times 15 is 30. And then all you have left is x minus 20. So you can just drop the parentheses and it'll look like that. X is really close to being on its own. The last thing you should do to both sides is add 20. And you get x equals 50. Now, I didn't bother to hide number 4, but we can talk about it. It's the same thing. You're looking for this big arc. Right? This whole thing. So, your formula, angle. This is a right angle, right? That's what that little square means, is 90. Equals 1/2 times x minus 90, right? Your small arc was 90. To get rid of that half, you multiply both sides by 2. This cancels. So 2 times 90 is 180. X minus 90 stays. Add 90 to both sides. X equals 270. All right, one last problem to go, and then we're done. If you're able to, pause, try this on your own. Okay, so we have the angle, right? This is your angle. We have the big arc this time. 178. This is your big arc. But we don't know what the small arc, right? The small arc has an x. So let's start. Your angle is equal to half your big arc minus your small arc. What's your angle? 53. Half stays. Big arc is 178. Small arc is x. So it should look like this. Still a similar first step, right? You have this half. You need to get rid of it. So you multiply both sides by 2. 2 times 53 will give you 106. This 1/2 and this 2 cancel. So 2 times 53 is 106. Since this is all that's left, you can drop your parentheses and it'll look like that. All right, so you have 178 minus x. You need to get x on its own. You should get rid of this 178, and since it's positive, you're going to subtract 178 on both sides. When you do that, these cancel. And you have to look at what you have left, right? It's not a positive x. It's a negative x. And 108 minus 178 gives you a negative 72. So you want x to be positive, right? So your last step should be to divide both sides by -1. Multiply both sides by -1. No matter what, you're changing the sign of both sides, and you get x equals 72. All right, that's it.